Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and as usual, we've got another good one for you today. Today, we actually connect with Calvin Jackson. Calvin is a listener who reached out and said, man, I have a crazy story about bison hunt, moose hunt, this, that. It's a fun story. But I do want to call him out as being another listener that had the balls, I guess, to reach out and say, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast. So take a note from Calvin. He's an awesome guy. Enjoy his stories. But if you have a good story, make sure you reach out to me as well, because I love listening to listener stories, I think, more than anything else. So thank you again to Calvin for coming on the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. Now let's go ahead and kick this thing off and let Calvin tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Calvin. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, brother. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well, man. I'm doing real well. And, of course, I'm happy that you're here. You fall into the category of my personal favorite guests, which are when the listeners reach out and say, man, I got a hell of a story for you. I'd love to be on the podcast. So, Calvin, thank you for reaching out. And I'm excited to hear your story. Why don't we start this thing off right and just let you introduce yourself so that people know who they're hearing stories from today?
Yeah, so my name's Calvin Jackson. I live up in Prince George, British Columbia. And I've been hunting since I was about 12. Most of that's unsuccessful until I moved a little further north, and I've been having a heyday ever since.
There you go, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think you are. We've had a couple Canadians, but I don't think anyone from your neck of the woods. So excited to hear what you got for us. And you have a unique accent, which is fun. It reminds me of my in-laws. They're from Canada, specifically Saskatchewan. So not exactly the same area, but they've got that same kind of. I don't know. I'm from Texas now, so I say drawl, but I don't know what. You have a unique tone in your voice, Calvin, and I like it. It reminds me of some people that I love.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I got a lot of family out in Saskatchewan too, so I bet you they know each other at some point.
Yeah, I bet they do. So I know that you. We're just gonna jump right into this thing, but you sent me a pretty lengthy message, kind of explaining this story to me, which I love and I hate. I told you that already. I love that you are that excited that you want to tell me the story, but I don't read them, and it's really hard for me not to read them because I want to experience them here first on the podcast, man. So why don't you set the stage? All I really know is it was a bison hunt turned moose hunt. So fill us in, Calvin, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so earlier in the year, my two buddies, they texted me and they said, yeah, we won the limited entry bison hunt just up in northern British Columbia there. And so they asked if I wanted to tag along, and sure enough, I did, because I could be a good helping hand kind of thing, maybe shoot some other critters while we were out there. And so
yeah. Now, let me ask. So I've had one other guy who had a bison hunt on here, and his was out of Utah, and it was a once in a lifetime tag. Is that the case up in British Columbia?
No,
is this more common than that?
No, you can just buy bison tags over the counter up here.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I assume that's just residents. As a non-resident, you probably have to like get a guide and use their allocation or something, right?
No, it just gets really expensive if you're going to do it on your own from out of country.
Got it. Okay. I just had to ask. Go ahead, Calvin. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, they run rampant up there. So yeah, it's not too difficult to go get a bison tag and hunt one down, but it was for us for some reason.
All right. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good for us.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, so it was set for end of October, and we were going up there with full expectations of being knee deep in snow. And because I was up there a year prior in August on a moose hunt and ended up getting 6 inches of snow in August. So
wow,
we were fully expecting in end of October, bunch of snow, get up there, and it's 20 degrees the entire time. Like nothing but blue skies and sunshine.
Wow. I don't know what that does for the critters, but it's nice to hunt in that weather.
Oh, it sure is. So yeah, so I'm waiting on my buddies to come and pick me up because I'm 8 hours north of them. And I get a call. They say, yeah, we'll be there probably around 8 o'clock at night. We'll hop in the truck. We'll go the rest of the way. And then 8 o'clock rolls around. I phone them, hey, where are you guys at? Oh, we forgot the quad key back at home. So they got about halfway up and then turned around to go grab the quad keys back at home. And so now I'm too excited to sleep, so I'm up the whole time making sure I got all my gear
Yeah.
and yeah, they finally roll into my driveway probably around 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And so we all pile in, hop in the truck and start making the rest of the trek up there.
Gotcha, man. How long was their delay? Like, how much did they have to backtrack and then get back on the road? Like, how much later did they arrive than they were supposed to?
So yeah, they were supposed to be there around 8 o'clock at night and they got there at 2 in the morning. So
Woo! So a lot,
yeah,
like 6 extra hours. Damn.
yeah, 6 extra hours. But yeah, so we all get in the truck and start going up there, and sure enough, we stop in Fort St. John. That's just a little further north from Prince George, and we grab breakfast and last minute necessities, and then we drive the rest of the way out. And we had this spot that we mapped out for months in advance, and get out there, and we're struggling to get up there, and we finally get to the spot, and there's a giant gate in the middle of the road. So we're like, okay, yeah, I guess this is where we disembark on the quad. And we only had the one quad at the time. And so first two guys go in with a load of gear, and you're going to get everything started and set up. And I was just going to hold down the truck and wait till it was my turn kind of thing.
Yeah. That
And
makes sense.
yeah, and so sure enough, I think probably about 4 hours later, he comes back for the second load and me, and everything's fine. I was glassing up from the truck a few mountain goats and just kind of taking in the scenery.
Yeah.
So we get about, I don't know, I'd say 20 minutes into the second trip here, and the bolt that connects the A arm to the quad gives out, and the quad does a nosedive.
Oh.
And quad's completely pooched. So we are not going anywhere. Our buddy's 4 hours into the bush, like 4 hour quad ride into the bush.
Jesus.
And so we're like, okay, well, grab as much as you can carry and let's start walking. And yeah, I think we hiked for about 6 hours in the Cougar Woods. And eventually some other guys on their quad with the same bison tag, but just a little earlier in the year, they came by and they're like, why are you guys walking all this way? And like, yeah, quads broke down and we're trying to make it to our buddy at camp and all this and that. So like, oh, okay, well, like throw all your stuff on, we'll shuttle it out there, and then we'll come back, pick you guys up, and we'll drive you the rest of the way. So we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And at this point, we've been walking for hours and hours, and we were both tired, out of water, out of food, because that's all back at camp. And finally get picked up, roll into camp, and we're both beat. So we make a quick mountain house meal and pass out right away.
Yeah.
And we're all thinking like, what the hell are we going to do tomorrow? Because we're not seeing
Right?
anything here. Like, we're kind of pooch. Like, if we shoot something, that's going to be a whole nother thing. But just how the hell are we getting out of here? What are we going to do for transportation? So while we were in there waiting on dinner and just kind of getting ready for bed, we saw like 6 other hunters in there with the exact same idea as we had. So we're like, yeah, let's get everything out of here. We'll go try and band-aid fix the quad, and we'll go to the next mountain range south from us here, and we'll try hunting out there.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, sleep away. Yeah, my one buddy who owned the quad, he gets up, packs his gear, and he's gone first thing, like right at first light. And we were gonna take down camp. He's gonna band-aid fix the quad, come pick up everything. I was just gonna walk the whole trek back, kind of thing. And so we start tearing down camp. He's gone for hours. We get everything put away, and we start walking towards where the truck was parked, and hopefully we'd run into him sooner than later. Well, sure enough, we walked like 90% of the way, and then we finally see him coming around the corner, biggest smile on his face, just happy as could be. Comes wheeling up to us. We were like, whoa, man, what the hell happened? I thought it was a Band-Aid fix, like limp it along. And he goes, no, actually, one of the guys that we ran into last night's a Polaris mechanic, and we found the bolt. And so we fixed the quad. It's good as new. He put some Loctite on it. It's running like a hot damn now.
Wow, what are the odds of that, man?
Yeah, no kidding. And so we're like, oh, that's perfect. So we get back to the truck, load everything up into the truck, and we're like, okay, we're going to try the other spot on the other side of the mountains here. And yeah, we're all like smiles ear to ear, and then we start going down the next road over to get into the range, and we realized then it was a reservation.
Okay.
And the natives up there are not huge fans of white people.
Okay.
And so our one buddy that we were hunting with is from Chile. So me and my other buddy, we go hide in the back seat of the truck while he's out the window doing all the talking. And sure enough, they let us right through. They're super friendly. And we're like, okay, so we found a Polaris mechanic, and we've been let through basically into the promised land now. I guess if you use up all your bad luck, all you got left is good luck, kind of thing, right?
So you're telling me this is all news to me, man.
Yeah. It's just a matter of how long you can stick out riding out the bad luck, kind of thing. And so sure shit, we get to the other side and we set up camp, and we're on cloud nine at this point. We're sitting in camp. We're already seeing signs of moose and deer, and we're seeing, and they don't range cattle out there either. So, and we're seeing cattle poo. So we're saying, oh yeah, no, that's bison shit now. And so yeah, we spend the night part way, and we drive my buddies. We wake up the next morning. We drive the rest of the way into the back of the valley, and until the truck can't go any further, we're crossing these sketchy bridges where we line the truck up just right for the last two boards that aren't rotting out on this bridge, and shoot the truck across as fast as we could. And then we'd have the quad on the trailer, and we'd just walk the quad trailer across the bridge so nothing's falling through. And we get across like the third bridge like this, and I'm kind of thinking like, how the hell are we getting out of here? Because this is gonna suck. And like this is
I've
terrible.
definitely crossed some bridges where I'm like, I don't know if this is a great idea. We got to find another way home.
Yeah, and but this is the only road in and out. And so we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll literally cross that bridge when we get there. And yeah, we finally make it across the last bridge. The road turns to hell. Can't get the truck any further. So we're like, okay, now we're gonna take the quad out. Same deal. The first two guys go in, start setting up camp. I'll wait behind, and just kind of do some glass and hang out, listen to music, have a couple beers or something like that, waiting for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're gone for probably, again, 4 hours, and buddy comes and picks me up. Sure shit, we're hop back on the quad. Everything's loaded up. Quad's feeling solid this time. And we start booting down the road, and there's old elk camps and moose camps from the guides that run back there. And there's a couple cabins, and we're checking all that out. Seems pretty cool. And come around the corner, moose standing right on the road, probably 50 feet away from us. We're like, oh, would you look at that? Oh, no, he's not big enough. Okay, pass him up. Let's keep going. We're here for bison, not moose, kind of thing. And so
yeah,
finally get out to where we set up camp, and it's just this gorgeous little strip. You got two mountain wall, like they're walls on both sides, and a perfect crystal clear little creek that runs right beside camp, and just freaking gorgeous. And it opens up into like some plains with some wicked steep mountains on both sides. And so we get there kind of right towards the end of the day, and we go hike out this little knob just that's basically behind our camp, and we start glassing, and sure enough, there's I think there was like three really healthy sized whitetails just sitting right on the other side of the hill from camp, kind of thing. And so we were like, well, I mean, do we want to have deer steaks for dinner tonight, or like what are we doing here? And
Sounds pretty good to me.
yeah, no kidding. And so we were kind of humming and hawing. We're like, yeah, well, we're here for bison, not deer. Like we can shoot deer anywhere and anytime, basically. So like maybe we'll just watch them for tonight. If we don't see anything tomorrow, we'll crack one off. And yeah, it was pretty cool because we watched them for probably a good 45 minutes, and we actually watched one of the bucks breed one of the does, and so we were like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
never seen that before. That's kind of cool, but like that might be your last one, buddy. And so anyways, it gets dark. We can't see anything. Go to bed. Wake up, and it's like it's still 6 degrees out, and we're like, oh my god, it is hot, hot, hot out here. And we're like, okay, well, let's go take a little walk. Like this is our first day of open season on the bison, and so we climb up on this little knob to see over all the willows and stuff in the bottom of the canyon. And I think that morning we probably glassed up like 6 bull moose just from camp.
No way.
Yeah,
From
and
camp, all right.
yeah, from camp. And so, and every single one of them was a shooter for sure. And so we're like, okay, well, yeah, well, at least we know there's moose here, but we're here for bison still. So we hiked as far back into the canyon as we could, and we were seeing grizzly tracks left, right, and center, and every south-facing hillside looked like it was a golf ball from the grizzlies digging for roots and bugs and stuff like that in the spring, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, yeah, let's kind of keep our heads on a swivel here because this is sketchy as sketchy gets, kind of thing. And sure enough, we walked from the start, I'd say pretty well halfway through this valley, and we stop, have lunch in the creek, and we're not seeing anything. We're seeing tons of tracks, no bison, no lots of old bison sign, but nothing new. And we're kind of thinking like, oh, they're probably in the high country if it's this warm. And the bison up there, I swear to God, they're closer to mountain goats than they are cattle.
No way.
Yeah, because you'll see
I never
them
even thought
on.
they'd go up a mountain. I just assumed they'd stay in like prairies and stuff. I don't know
Oh,
enough about them, I guess.
yeah, I know these things. They'll climb like a straight up hill face if it means that they're going to be a little more comfortable. I don't know what they're on, but they're on some.
Huh.
But yeah, and so we kind of get about halfway, have our lunch, sit down, kind of make a game plan, and we're like, okay, well, you know what? We'll keep our eyes out on the way back to camp, but tomorrow we'll climb one of the major mountains out here and see if we can't get a bird's eye view of the whole valley. Maybe bump into them up in the Alpine. And so we're kind of hanging out. We keep going through the day. We're seeing more moose. We're seeing those same deer that we saw the night before, and have a good night in camp and rest up because we know we're going to be hiking miles and miles tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, wake up right before first light and head out up this whole hillside that's been dug out by the grizzlies for the past I don't know how long. So we're like, yeah, you know what? We've done some stupid stuff in the past, but shit, I think that's got to be one of the dumbest. And yeah, like we're walking on trails with grizzly prints that had to have been 8 or 9 foot bears.
Jesus.
And we find a little saddle that's a little shorter to cut up, and we keep going. And I'm kind of bringing up the rear because I'm the biggest guy out of the group. And sure enough, we stop at a little pond, get a quick drink, and keep marching. And we're going up, and we get to the point where the trees start to thin out, and there's nothing but these giant gray slate rocks. And we're walking by. My buddy's like, "Yo, that's a fossil in the rock here." I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a giant seashell, and we're kind of checking it out, having a break, eating lunch again, and keep going a little further, and we get to where it's true alpine and nothing but rocks. And sure enough, every single rock is made up of nothing but old seashell fossils.
Oh,
And
that's
so
cool, man.
we're going through all these fossils. We're trying to find the biggest one, and whoever's got the biggest one's got to carry all the dishes to the river and when we get back, kind of thing. And yeah, so we keep walking up a little further. I found a really nice 6 point elk shed up in the saddle from just that spring, so it wasn't bleached out yet. It's still nice and brown and just perfect condition. Mice hadn't gone to it yet, and it's kind of about this point where I'm thinking like, man, I really got to take a dump. I like, and then we're like, okay, who's got the wet wipes? And the buddy's like, I do, but I'm not going through my backpack yet. I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save this for the top of the mountain, kind of thing, like poop with a view. And so yeah, we
Best kind
hiked
of
the rest
poops.
of the way.
Best kind of poops.
Yeah, exactly. And so we hiked the rest of the way up, and we're seeing like some crazy wicked country from this point. You can just see for miles and miles. And sure enough, we get to the top and all of our phones start going off because this is like the third day of no service, and now all of a sudden we got service. So everybody's phoning mom and dad and girlfriends and wives and all that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, man, I still really gotta go to the washroom here. And so I ripped through my buddy's bag and do my thing. And then we are like, oh yeah, we came up here to glass, not to phone home, kind of thing. So we glassed for a little while, and one buddy goes like, wow, who leaves 2 sheets of plywood hung up in the willows out in the middle of nowhere? And my other buddy goes like, no, that's a moose. Like, that's a really, really big moose. And
Yeah.
so
2 sheets of
we're
plywood. God, that's a crazy visual. That's a really cool way of explaining it. Go ahead.
oh no, yeah. And so we're going like, holy shit, like we are, because I think we climbed 2 kilometers in elevation in a 4 kilometer hike. And
Yeah.
so we are
Jeez.
way the hell up there all of a sudden. And we can still see this moose without even binoculars, let alone a spotting scope or anything like that.
Wow.
And so my one buddy's like, yeah, we're gone. We're moving. And I'm tired and I'm kind of like, oh man, I kind of wouldn't mind having a water break. And like, we just got up here and haven't really done much glass. And he's like, no, we're moving. And so he's just gone before I even know what's happening. Back down the hill, and I'm like, holy shit, man, like wait up. We get down to the bottom, that's right by camp there. I'm just beaten. He goes, no, you go ahead, you shoot it. I was like, no, man, you found it, you shoot it. He's like, no, I'm not shooting this thing. We're walking away if you're not. So I'm like, oh,
What?
okay, fine. I was like, you know what, whatever. So we start walking in. We have an idea about where he is, but we never put a pin on him on our phone or anything like that. And we're in these willows that are 12 feet tall. And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, we could be standing beside him and have no idea. I kind of don't want to get run over by this moose if we scare the hell out of him. So we walk a little further in and we're taking like a really wide berth, and all of a sudden he just vanished. We have no idea where he went because we could see him the whole walk down and he was just gone all of a sudden.
Oh, no
We're
way.
like,
That's
oh, what
awful.
the hell? Yeah. And so, like, how the hell do you lose a house with antlers? And so we're like, okay, whatever. We'll climb up to the little glassing knob by camp, see if we can't find him from there. Yep, sure enough, he's gone. Nowhere to be found. So
No
we're like,
way.
oh shit, okay. And so we keep kind of by this point, it's like the end of the day. We head back to camp and we're just kind of hanging out, and over the next couple of days we're just finding moose, but no more deer, and the bison just seem to be nowhere to be found. And so my 2 buddies, they're big into fly fishing. So on, I think, day 6, they're like, yeah, you know what? We're just going to take a day to go fly fish this creek.
Good for
And I
them.
was like,
Is this area known to have like a good buffalo population, or is it like, hit or miss, and that's why the tags are so easy to get?
it's pretty well guaranteed, but you got to usually hit them in the late season, like kind of January time, because then
Gotcha.
they really are, they're moving around in the down lows and just not an issue to find. But for some reason, it was so abnormally hot that year that yeah, they were just gone.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, so these guys are going out fly fishing, and I'm like, well, screw you guys. I don't have my fly fishing rod, and I don't even know how to fly fish. So I'm gonna go hunting still, because that's what we're here to do, and see if I can't find anything. So I walk into the deeper chunk of the valley, and I found an old bison deadhead in the creek bottom. And so I was like, oh, that's
Oh, that's
pretty
cool.
damn cool. And so I got
Yeah.
walking around in the middle of nowhere, kind of throwing out a few elk bugles to see if I can't get anything to start talking back, but no such luck. So I'm walking back into camp with this bison skull. I was like, guys, look what I found. This is pretty cool. Like, at least we know they're here.
Right?
And my one buddy, he's like, man, we saw a huge moose right on the road this morning when we were heading out fishing. I was like, get the hell out of here. So if I turned left instead of right, there'd be a moose hanging in camp. He's like, yep, you're right.
Did they
So I
not?
was like,
So I know that they were fishing, but do they have moose tags too, or were you the only one with a moose tag?
it was just my one buddy that didn't have a moose tag. So the
Oh,
other two of us, it was kind of on site, but he, in his infinite wisdom, left his rifle in camp
of course. Okay, good
in
deal.
grizzly country too, nonetheless. So I don't know what his thinking there, what his thinking was there, but
Yeah, man. The only way to guarantee that you're going to see what you're supposed to be hunting is to leave your weapon behind. That's the only guaranteed way to
yeah,
find the game you're looking for.
yeah, no kidding. But yeah, and so we were we were kind of talking back at camp, and it's this kind of sun's going down, and my buddy goes, you know what? We're gonna take a walk back there and see if he's come back. We're gonna go try take two of this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I've got a 300 Win Mag, and my other buddy's got a little lever action 30-30, and those are the only two rifles we had in camp. And sure enough, we're all just talking, walking, not paying attention or anything. Buddy looks up, there he is, right on the road. He's like, everybody stop, stop, just sit down. So I'm like, oh my God. And he's looking right at us. We are so busted. Like, he knows we are there. And so he's like, okay, well, you found this one. Or I told him, you found this one this morning. This one's all you, and you cannot change my mind about that. And he's like, okay, yeah. I'm gonna go push left in the bushes and see if I can't get nice and close to him. And then the moose is just looking at us, doesn't care, goes back to munching away.
No way.
He's looking at us, and then yep, goes back again to munching. He's just sitting there. He's not wandering off or anything. And my buddy's putting a stalk on him, but it's like a 50-yard stalk. It's not like not anything crazy.
Yeah.
And I look at him, I'm like, use my gun. Don't use your 30-30, use my gun. And so he's like, okay. It's sighted in for like 100 yards. I was like, yeah, you're not even going to be able to really push it out any further than 50 feet kind of thing.
Yeah, you're gonna be like, all you're gonna see is brown.
Yeah. I was like, it's on minimum zoom. Like, this is a close shot. If you screw it up, I'm never inviting you along ever again, kind of thing. Yeah. And so sure enough, the bull, like, he starts walking around to kind of get a broadside shot, and the bull wanders off. And he's like, oh my God. And then I just see him hoofing it across the road. And then I see the moose down a little ways, and it's just silent. I'm waiting for the shot. I look at my other buddy and I say, do you think he's going to shoot or what? And then just as I'm saying that, just boom, I see this moose do a backflip and just lay out on the ground. We're like, holy shit, nice shot, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so we walk up and it's still got a bit of life left in it. So he takes his 30-30 back and shoots it, I think, like 3 more times before it
No way.
finally expires. And so we're like,
Was he shooting it
holy,
in the leg, or where the hell was he shooting it?
right? No, he was shooting it right in the chest. He shot one in the neck. Like, I don't know how this thing was still kicking, but it it didn't take too long.
Damn.
But yeah, so we were cutting it open and thinking that this was the big one that we saw earlier in the trip. And because this thing is huge, like we couldn't even put our fingertips from one side of the antlers to the others, kind of thing.
No
And
way. That's awesome.
yeah,
How or do you have I'm assuming you got some photos that you can share with me?
oh yeah, I'll send you the pictures right after
Okay.
this.
Perfect.
But yeah, and so we were cutting them up, we were caping them out, and we got the one guy standing guard for bears and wolves and all that, and we're just getting to work, and we start taking the hide off around his butt, and we're like, what the hell is that? It's like, oh, somebody like shot him in the ass earlier. Like there's this giant kind of like pus bubble in his butt, and we're kind of looking at it and like, no, that's a like he got chased out of somewhere because that's an antler that's stabbed into his butt kind of thing. And so we're like, holy
Huh.
shit! So this isn't the one that we saw yesterday because he's the one that would have done it.
Yeah.
And so we're
There's
like,
there's a
oh
bigger, badder moose out there somewhere.
yeah, and we're like, oh, okay, well, we know he's still around at least. But yeah, so we get back to working, and there's like these crazy weird bruises around his ribs. And we're like, what the hell is causing that? And then we get to his belly, and I find three 30-30 bullets stuck in this moose. And what was happening is the bullet would go in, but didn't have enough power to actually leave the hide on the other side. So it would just get stuck in his skin and run underneath his skin into his belly. And
Are
this
those
was
those are the shots from your buddy, or are those from previous hunters?
no, those are the shots from my buddy from like 4 feet away trying to put this moose down.
That's crazy.
And so they weren't making it all the way through the other side of the moose, but they did some serious carnage on the inside. So we're like, oh well, good thing we didn't use your rifle for the initial shot because he wouldn't have gone down. I don't think.
No, he would have run miles probably,
Yeah,
or
yeah. And
kilometers, I
so
guess.
sure enough, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so get them all cut up. We're hanging them back in camp, and we're like, oh my god, like this thing is freaking huge, and we're eating like these giant tomahawk steaks after at like 2 in the morning because
Oh,
that's
that's
like
awesome.
by the time we get back to camp, and we're like, holy shit, like a total caveman picture here. Yeah, and go to bed and like, oh my god, I can't believe how big that moose is. Ended up not seeing that bigger bull. Never ended up finding a bison. Didn't see one. Didn't hear one. Didn't smell one. Nothing. So we're like, oh, damn it! Like whatever. Such is life. We'll come back later. Come back next year or something like that. And yeah, and so we finally get all camp packed up. It's time to head home, and we're packing the moose out, and we see these other guys coming in. They're like, "Oh yeah, like clearly you guys had a pretty good trip out here. Like, is that his back back shoulder there?" I was like, "Nope, that's his or back quarter. Nope, that's his front quarter." Like, holy shit, we haven't seen a moose that big out here in a while.
Yeah.
And we're like, "Yeah, by the way, there's a bigger one. You just gotta find it because he disappears pretty quick."
Yeah.
So like, holy Jesus, okay, so they're gone in a heartbeat. We finally get everything packed out to packed out to the truck, and like, oh yeah, we forgot about all those shitty bridges. Like, uh-oh, like this is gonna suck. Like we're all
Yeah.
just exhausted, and now we're finally starting to hit some colder weather. So now it's like -2 on the quad ride back, which isn't bad, but we were all sweaty, and yeah, so we were all freezing and not feeling like working anymore. And
Yeah. No, I've been
yeah,
there.
sure enough, it we get to the first bridge and we're like, yeah, that river's picked up quite a bit from when we were last year. Like, we better make sure that we do this right the first time, or else we're going to be stuck out here for a lot longer than we wanted to be. And yeah, sure enough, the truck just barely made it across. The one board started cracking pretty damn good, but never ended up falling through. And yeah, made it back out to camp and drove the 13 hours back home.
God. I was really worried that you guys were going to fall in on those bridges. That's how these stories usually go.
Oh,
You guys got through
I
it.
really think that, yeah, there's no way that we shouldn't have, but somehow we made it.
Yeah.
Like I'd question taking quads across it, let alone a truck. So
Yeah. I've never
yeah,
taken my truck across any sketchy bridges, but I've walked across some logs that it's like, why am I doing this? This is so dumb. Like, and then not
yeah,
only do I like I'm getting across, but now then I got to figure out how to get back. Like, it's just it never. But you do it, right? And I was just going for a turkey of all things when I was doing that stupid thing. You're not even like a buffalo or a moose, something cool. Damn turkeys.
yeah,
I'll tell you what, if I'd killed a turkey, I don't know, I would have had to like throw the bird across the river. I don't know how I would have gotten across because I couldn't have done it holding the bird. I'll tell you that right now.
yeah. Well, this is one of those things where you're like, okay, we'll either toss them or we're going in and we're swimming across.
Yeah, right, right. Well, Calvin, man, that was a great story, bud. I'm sad you didn't get your bison, or your buddy didn't get his bison, but it's a pretty cool moose story, and it's
Yeah, yeah,
oh man, I love that like when your buddy was like, man, who would staple two plywood boards to the trees? Like, that's a cool visual. I immediately was like, oh god, what is that? But yeah, man. Well,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, but it was also like pretty surreal because it feels like you're like the bottom of that valley. It's like a prairie, like just nice
Yeah.
and flat, tall grass, willow thickets, and alders and all that. And then on both sides, you could look up at pretty well any point. We were counting stone sheep and we were glassing up mountain goats and all that. So it was like a damn Disney movie every day that we woke up out there.
That's awesome, man. That's
Yeah,
epic. I had my first event kind of like that where I was just in a spot and I was like, man, there are 15 animals in this valley with me, and it was elk, there were moose, it's just so much going on. I'm like, this is even if nothing happens, this is a pretty cool scenario I happen to get myself into. So I get that.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it was funny too because one of the guys that I was out at camp with there, we were flying out to Vegas the day that we got back from our trip.
Okay.
And so we go from absolute cut off from the outside world to nothing but flashing lights
Right.
and all Vegas in its glory kind of thing. And so we were chilling by the pool and we are like, yeah, I wonder how cold it is up in Pink Mountain right now. And we pull up the weather app. The day after we left, it dropped down to -30 and snowed about 2 feet.
And I bet all the buffalo just showed up right there too, right?
Yeah, and we were sitting there and we're like, yeah, I bet you they're all right at camp right now.
Yeah.
Right where we had camp set up, I bet you they're all hanging out.
That's too funny, man. That's too funny.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, hey, I know you reached out to me saying you had this one story you got to tell. I got to ask, do you have any other stories you want to tell us today, or you want to wrap it up right there, man? That was a good one. So it's your call.
Yeah, I mean, all the other stories are pretty uneventful, but I sent you that picture of the buck that I shot just in early November,
Yeah.
and it was funny too because I was just driving around like mid morning and was kind of thinking like, man, I'm hungover. I don't really want to be out here right now. I'm tired. I'm just gonna go home and maybe I'll check out one more spot, but we'll see. And I drive to the end of this road trying to find a turnaround, and sure enough, it starts going into like a mud bog, and I'm just driving my daily truck everywhere. So I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good excuse to turn around right away. Sure enough, back into a pullout, and I see a muley walking through the old cut block, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
he's just one right there. And at this point, it's got to have 4 points or better. And I'm like, okay, come on, have antlers, Oh, okay, yeah, it's got antlers. And I'm listening to that one episode you had with the lady from Alberta who did the wolf hunt, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Brittany Kitchen. Yeah.
Brittany Kitchen. Yeah, so I was listening to that episode, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's kind of interesting. And yeah, I see that buck, and I'm like, okay, he's got antlers, and then he turns his head. I was like, oh, he's got four. He's going down. And so get out of the truck and shot him through. I think it's got to be about 4 or 5 trees. Just bushwhacking that shot, and he folded up in a heartbeat. He was down and out, and so I was like, "Oh my god! Like that's the biggest deer to date." He was huge. He was old, fat neck, huge gut on him, and walk up to
Yeah.
him like just freaking out, just
It's a
so
cool deer,
happy. And
man. Yeah.
I'm
He
like,
looks, I mean, he's a tube, right? His neck
yeah,
is just doesn't even exist. And his antlers are super unique. They're not like, and my friend Jermaine Hodge knows this term, and he's told it to me like 300 times, but I can't remember it. But they're like fat. They're like almost like they're like a moose paddle, but then they kind of split like the mule deer do, right? They're a little bit thicker at the
yeah.
bases
He
of
was
the
starting to
splits.
yeah he was starting to palm out because he was so old, and I think I actually got him just in time because uh he was you could definitely tell he was starting to lose antler growth every year at that point. So I got him at just under his biggest, I would say.
Yeah, man.
But
He's a cool, very cool deer.
yeah, and so I'm looking at him, I'm like, how the hell am I gonna get this thing out? Like this is a 220-pound deer. There's no way in hell I'm dragging this thing out on my own.
Well,
So I
not with that attitude, Calvin. Come on, man. You got
yeah, but
it.
so like I got him out, and I'm still just super stoked. I shot him in the one spot that had service too. So I'm phoning my parents. I'm like, yeah, look what I did. And they're like, oh, Jesus Christ, you got your work cut out for you now. And so I drag him a little ways, and then it's just nothing but deadfalls and everything through there.
Oh
So
no, that
I'm like,
sucks.
yeah, there's no way I'm getting him through this. Like, not a chance, and without cutting him up at least. And so I phoned my buddy, and he's like, yeah, I'm there. I'll be there in a minute. I'm only like 2 hours out. I'll see you soon. And so sure enough, he gets to my pin, or like he gets to as far as he knows to go. And I'm like, okay, these are the directions. Just if you follow these lines, you'll get there just fine. You'll see my truck. I'm parked across the road like a total ass, and you'll know it when you see it, kind of thing. And so a couple hours goes by, and he's like, man, your directions suck. I am so lost. I have no idea where I am right now. And I was like, oh shit. So just as I'm on the phone with him, I hear all the wolves on the other side of my truck yipping off, and they're going nuts. And I was like, oh shit, did I just snipe this deer out from underneath these wolves? Like, were they in the middle of hunting this thing down? And I was like, okay, well, we got to move fast. And so I hop in my truck, and I just start taking off out of there like a bat out of hell, and just rallying my truck through like washouts and deactivations. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the most expensive deer I've ever had, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so finally get back to pavement. He meets me there. We hop in, scoot right back out there as fast as we could. Definitely bent some shit on my truck. There's no way that I didn't at least ruin 90% of my front end. And so, yeah, I get out there, and in the time that I was gone, his entire gut pile disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah,
God.
and I was maybe gone for half an hour, and all of it was gone.
No
So we're like,
way.
holy shit. So yeah, get them loaded into the truck, had a beverage, and yeah, scooted on back home. And I'm living with my buddy too. So his girlfriend comes out, and she's like, what the hell did you do? And open the tailgate. And she's like, Jesus Christ, you guys are retarded, kind of thing. Like, what are you guys doing with that? Like, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to manage it? And so we get it into the shop, and we get it all tied up, and trying to use my quad to keep this thing elevated. And sure enough, it starts to actually like pick the quad up off the ground.
Of course.
And we're like, okay, this is stupid. And like, we're going to bring down the roof trying to lift this thing. So we ended up cutting it up back at the house and get it all skinned out. And yeah, so my buddy was like, dude, I better be getting some, at least a few steaks and a package of pepperoni for helping you drag that stupid thing out of the bush over all those deadfalls, because that was brutal.
Yeah, dude, that's awful. That's awful.
Yeah.
But that's a great story, man. And those are the most fun, right? Let me ask you, did you have a wolf tag or not, or no? Or in your
You can. You
province,
don't
can you?
even need to buy wolf tags up here. You can shoot 3 a year just as you see them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Did you have one, or did you not lay eyes on the wolves? Or
I caught the one that was like I swear it was the ballsiest one because I saw him like booting through the trees, but I couldn't crack one shot off at him fast enough, and so I was like, "Yeah, okay, you can live till the snow flies, and then I'm coming back for you guys."
there
Yeah,
you go, man. Very cool.
yeah.
Man, those are fun, Calvin. Well, you got any other ones, or are we wrapping it up here? You tell me, my guy.
Oh, I got a few more, but maybe I'll save them for another time if you'll have me back.
Yeah, man, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy. Well, then let's do this, Calvin. Let's wrap it up. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you? Maybe you'll get a couple followers. Maybe you won't. I don't know. Can't promise anything. But
Yeah, no,
why don't you share it?
it'd be great. Yeah, no, you can find me on Instagram at lastspire_outdoors, and that's the only place that I'm ever really active. So it's where you can find me, and yeah.
There we go, man. There we go. Well, hey, Calvin, I appreciate you reaching out, man. I say this to you, but I mean to all listeners. I love it when you guys reach out and have stories for me. I find it's the most fun. You guys are the most fun to talk to, and those are the stories that I get the best feedback from my listeners. Being like, man, I guarantee people will be like, "You kidding me with Calvin's stories?" And that's the kind of stuff that I love to read. So, thank you, man. I appreciate it, and we'll definitely have you back sometime soon.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Absolutely, brother. All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories of the books. Again, I want to thank Calvin for being brave enough to reach out, putting up with me through all the scheduling conflicts, and of course for sharing his story with me and of course all of you listeners. So thank you again, Calvin. I appreciate you, brother. Make sure you give him a follow on Instagram. It's lastspire_outdoors. I will make sure to put a link to that in the show notes so it's easy to find. But beyond that, guys, make sure you go and follow us as well. It's huntingstories_official on Instagram. Also, give us a review however you're listening to this today. Give us a review, whatever you think we deserve, 2 stars, 5 stars, whatever you think it's worth. But give us a review, and that way more people will find us. So thank you very much for your time. Please reach out if you have some stories of your own. Speaking of stories of your own, let's get out there and start making more stories. Thank you.